Hey guys, Subtle Static here and welcome to another video. This is lesson 4 for the Serum course that we've been putting together now. Look, I do apologize for the delay with this one. We've actually been renovating over the past few weeks, so I haven't actually had a studio in that time. So understandably, I wasn't able to get a video out during that time. So here's lesson 4. This is actually going to be the last lesson in this course. I'm still going to be doing plenty of Serum videos, so don't worry about that. But it's just the last lesson in this actual course. Just because throughout the first 3 lessons, if you haven't watched them, go watch them. You'll get lost in this one otherwise. I've kind of just taught you the general basics of sound design within Serum. Like, you should be pretty comfortable at this stage with working around Serum if you've messed around yourself enough. So today what I wanted to show you mainly was just sort of how useful these little macro things can be along the side here, and also our mod wheel, and I was going to show you how to use velocity and note mapping as well and where that can be useful. So today's going to be a little bit less practical, but you are more than welcome to follow along and make your own synth patch out of this, because today's going to be all about experimentation. So you're pretty much going to be watching me make a patch from scratch. It's going to be a really complicated one. It's kind of going to be like I don't really know how it's going to sound at the end of it, but it's going to kind of aiming for like a little bass bram sort of thing. So just feel free to watch along. Hopefully you guys can learn something from it, and I'll try and explain what I'm doing as best as I can as we're going. So let's get started. What I want to explain is these little macros and also the mod wheel. So the way these work is, it's obviously a macro if you've heard of those. They just allow you to modulate more than one parameter just with one knob. So say if we were to enable the unison on this, and we've just dropped and dragged this little macro source to the D tune, we can also map that to our coarse tuning, and why not our fine tuning as well. Why is that not doing it? There we go. Cool. Yeah, so if that was just to mess with this, let's listen to how it sounds. And yeah, you've got like 4 of those to play with. Mod wheel works very similarly. That's obviously just mapped to your mod wheel on your MIDI controller. So you can assign these things to pretty much like every single parameter on here if we wanted to. So like, and it's, yeah, you can do way too much with it. So like, that's probably not going to make a huge difference because they're not really doing much. Cool. Okay, so that's your macros and your mod wheels. We'll explain those a little bit better later on in the video. First of all, let's go into our A oscillator. We're going to make a really crazy wavetable. Now we did sort of do this in the previous lesson, but just make something random if you're following along. Something like that is great. So now we exit out of this. And also, if you're watching last lesson, we do need to map this wavetable position to an envelope. So we're going to chuck our sustain down to 0. And we're going to add that to our wavetable position. Now if we listen to it. Now with this wavetable, it sounds okay. Like, I'm sure there's bits in there that I could work with, but I've noticed that there's a lot of gaps within that wavetable, like a lot of silent spots when you're playing a note. It kind of jumps and... way we can fix that is if we go back into our editor, we can scroll along here, and here is a silent part. Probably best to clip that one out because if that one wouldn't sound too great anyway. So you can just click from where you want to remove, and then hold down Shift, and then select to where you want to remove. And then up here, we click Add and Remove, and then Remove Multi-Section. Now I'm going to be doing this through this entire wavetable until there is no more of these little blank spots, because there's quite a few. So once again, I'm just going to remove this whole section here. We'll go Remove Multi-Section. So I'm just going to fast forward this bit just because I'm going to be doing that over and over again. And then when I'm done, I'll start it back up again. All right, so I've removed all those little silent bits from the wavetable here, but now because I've cut so much out, there's going to be little bits where it doesn't quite flow so well. So what we can do is if we just make sure we've got this number 1 selected, and then we'll head right up to the end, we'll press Shift, and then in our morph, we'll go Morph Crossfade. So now, instead of just that 1 point, we've got 256, so it'll blend it between all of those, which is really handy. So let's get out of this now and listen to how it sounds. So you can hear it doesn't jump anymore, there's no like things going on. So I reckon I could make something really cool out of this wavetable. So where I would probably start is I might just chuck the unison up to something like 5. Yep. I don't like that end note or that end sound. That's not too bad. I think we can work with that. So honestly, with these wavetables, it's just kind of like playing until you can get something that sounds good. So now we're going to enable our sub, and we might just turn that down slightly, something like 65. And then oscillator B, we're going to enable that as well. But you'll notice as we're playing this, the oscillator B just kind of, it doesn't fit well. It just kind of sounds like there's a saw wave playing in the background. We can blend that in using FM synthesis. So we just click down here on our little morph wheel. We can select FM from A, and we'll just turn that up until it kind of blends better. There we go. I'm happy with that. So you can play with the octave as well. So I might try and put that down to like 1 or -1. Yep, I might just put the FM up a bit more for that. Yep, cool. I'm happy with that. Now what could we do? I might actually show you the symmetry mode. So these are your warp modes as we just looked at with the FM. It's also got a whole heap of crazy different modes you can use. So this one can be fun to use. So we'll go Asym plus, I'm assuming that means asymmetry. So we'll just add an LFO1 onto that, and we'll see what happens to our wavetable. So I think that sounds really cool on like a low note for this little bass bram thing, but it cuts in too quickly. So we can use a delay here. So now after it's gone through 1/8 note, it will kick in. But it's a little bit sharp. It just kind of starts immediately. That's where we can use our rise. So rise is pretty much a fade in for your LFO. Which is really useful because it just stops any harsh cut-ins for the LFO filters. For me, that rate's probably a bit slow, so I might try a 1/8. I don't know what sounds good. Maybe like, so you can enable, if we enable, you can enable trip. So that what trip is, it allows triplets. So you can do 1/4 triplet. Which I think sounds really cool. So I'm happy with that. Now what could we do? Let's play with some filters. So with Serum's filters, they are very advanced. I'm not sure if I explained them fully in previous lessons, but you've got all your basics. So low 6, that's a very like soft cutoff with the highs, and then you can go all the way up to a 24, which is a very harsh cutoff with the high notes. And then you've got highs, same kind of deal with your 6s and 24s. Bandpass, same kind of deal as well. Just sharpness, depending on which one you select. And peak filters and notch filters. You've got multis, which are really interesting. So let's say this one, you've got like a low band, high 12. At the moment, it just looks like a low pass, which that's what it is. So you can use this little morph knob here to swap between them. So middle is like a band pass, and up there is like a high pass. So they can be really useful if you're wanting to modulate between those really quickly, or just have like a nice gradual change over time within your note on like a pad or something. What else have we got? We've got flanges. These are lots of fun to play with. We're going to use that in this synth. Miscellaneous. These are just different crazy things. Like you've got stuff ranging from a ring modulator to a reverb to a French low pass. They're just really cool sounding low passes. You've got formants down here and even band reject, which I think Massive has. So yeah, lots of fun to play with those. At the moment, I'm just going to be selecting one of the flanges. So I'm going to give comb H6. Let's go HL6 plus. At the moment, this isn't going to really change the sound that much. But if we turn the res up, it's going to change it drastically. So you can hear the difference there. We do want this affecting the B oscillator though, and we also, we'll leave the sub. The sub can stay there. So this here is like your wideness. So that's almost like another res thing, but it just makes things go crazy, as you can see. So like if we were to modulate that, that could sound really cool. So just something going from that to that. So I'm just going to map the envelope 2 to that and then see what happens. I might do something the other way around, so we'll try this. That's a bit too full on for me. Maybe something like this. Yep. And that still doesn't sound that great, so what we can do is we can just add that to a cutoff. Something along those lines. But I think I want it going... So if you press Alt-Shift, you can actually select between the different modulation modes. So you can either have it going the left and the right arrow that you've seen in the Matrix. So like this thing here, you can swap between the two just by pressing the Alt and Shift button. So we want something along the lines of this. So we got a pretty cool effect there going on. Now we're going to play with some effects. So if we head in and turn on hyperdimension. I think for something like this, it sounds really cool when you've got that mix up fairly high. We are going to add a bit of distortion as well. Now, a problem that I'm noticing with this sound is that the bass is not coming through. Reason being is it's being affected by your distortion and also your hyper filters. So we didn't select direct out. So I'm just going to select that. And now the bass is a bit more prominent in there. So back to our effects. What else could we use? Let's add a bit of chorus and see how that sounds. So we'll change our delays up a bit, and maybe our feed. Yep. We're going to add a compressor. We will add multiband, and we'll just play with this until it sounds good. Cool, that sounds pretty cool. What could we do? Let's add in some reverb. Now, something that I find fun to do is messing with like the size and also the mix of the reverb with your modulators. So something like this. And then we'll also just put our low cut up to like something fairly high. And we're going to add our LFO 1 onto our spin depth. And also for our mix. I'm going to select another filter, and this is going to change the sound again, something crazy, and we're going to add a reverb filter. So I think I want to play with that cutoff, and I'm just going to add a LFO 2 onto that so that it filters nicely between those. Cool. I really like the sound of that. Another thing you can do, you can kind of like make your effects go in different orders. So say I want the compressor to kick in after the reverb, which is not something I would normally do, or I want the compressor to kick in after the filter and the reverb. So that's the last thing that's happening. Is going to sound pretty crazy. So as you can see, when you've got that multi-band compressor, it kind of just drags out that reverb, which can be a cool effect. It just tends to be hard to mix. Cool. All right, that is a little bass bram kind of thing, or just some cool little bass sound effect. It's not really a bram, but anyway. I did mention I was going to play with velocity and note mapping. So velocity mapping, this is really, really easy to do. So we just go over to our matrix, and in our source, we just want to select the velocity, which is here. And then for our destination, we want to select global, and we want to go amp. So it's currently not doing anything. That's because we need to select it and drag it up to 100. So you'll notice if I press really softly, it's really quiet, and if I press really hard, it's a lot louder. So that's how your velocity thing works. You can also map it to things like, say, your master tuning. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but maybe you did with a certain sound. Yeah, I was pressing the same key there, as you could probably see on the little keyboard down there. And it changes the tuning depending as to where I press it. But yeah, most of the time you just have that thing mapped to your amp. Key mapping can be lots of fun as well. So say your note mapping, if you were to, we could do it from here, but I'll just show you how to do it from here. We can just drag and drop that, say, to our cutoff. Now, depending on where I play on the keyboard, is depending on where that cutoff's going to be. So, So you could hear that cutoff really changes depending on where you press on the keyboard. And it's note individual as well, which is really cool. So like I could press 2 different notes and that cutoff point would be completely different for both notes. Alright, so that's where your note mapping can come in really handy. Just so like, say if you were making a respace, you might want to put a note map on your cutoff for your low pass filter, which is very typical of a respace, so that the cutoff changes depending on where you press your note. So that's your note mapping. I've showed you velocity, and also I've showed you these little macros and mod wheels, how handy they can be. To be honest, just for instance, let's say with this one, we wanted to map this little macro to our course tuning up here. We want to map it to our course tuning up here. We want to map it to our detune, and we're also going to map it to our cutoff. So if I was to mess with this while we're playing, have a listen to how it sounds. Yeah, so that's where macros can be really fun. Just like doing some cool sound design stuff, or if you had that just hooked up to like a return track where you were just recording audio from Serum when you were messing around with it. Yeah, they can be really fun to play with because you can just modulate multiple things with just one knob. Yeah, so that's macros, that's Serum. Hope you guys really enjoyed this little Serum course that we've put together now. So yeah, like I said, I will definitely be doing more Serum videos, but thank you for following along with these ones. A lot of you guys have really enjoyed them. I've had like a crazy amount of messages on my Instagram and on YouTube even, where people have just been like, thank you, I love these things. They've helped out a lot. So that's great for me. I'm happy that I've been able to help you guys, and hopefully you guys are happy that I've been able to help you. So if you do have any questions in regards to Serum or sound design or whatever, feel free to just DM me on Instagram. I'm usually pretty quick to get back to you guys. So thanks heaps for watching these videos, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks guys. Bye.